Tonight is all about spreading the vegan message in a positive, light-hearted, interesting, creative way. To be an activist, it doesn't mean shouting on the streets. It can mean many things. It can be making films, writing articles, telling your story with passion and compassion.
Hello everyone, this is mildly terrifying for me, so apologies if I forget something or who I am or anything like that. So today basically I wanted to talk to you about waste, and it's not the kind of waste that we think about when we think about what zero waste might be, but it's more kind of a personal level of choosing every day, a personal choice of what you are wasting, what you are consuming, and what it really means to be zero waste. But you might be thinking, who am I?
Speaking to the microphone.
Sorry, hello. You might be thinking, who am I and what the hell is zero waste? So I'll start there. I am Imi, as said, and I have a YouTube channel and an Instagram called Sustainably Vegan. And I basically am trying to be a social media activist where I can launch campaigns to bring vegans over to a zero waste lifestyle and also bring zero wasters over to a vegan lifestyle. And I found that people are very receptive when you show that there are very similarities between the two. Because as vegans, obviously, we care about animals and we care about their welfare. And as zero wasters, we care about the environment and we care about marine life dying because we're leaving plastic bottles in the oceans. So the whole point of my activism is to basically unite the two movements and to get people to really understand why there are two movements and why aren't there just one movement, and try and unite everyone. So let's go back to what I'm doing. So basically, okay, what is zero waste? There are lots of different definitions of what zero waste is, and I basically heard about zero waste when I watched a TED Talk. I went through a big phase of just binge watching them, thinking I really need some inspiration. I'm vegan. I've been vegan for a few years now, but I need to be doing more. I need to be active because I was a very inactive person, and I thought it's time to learn how to extend my reach. So I watched a TED Talk by a woman called Lauren Singer. You might have heard of her. She's created the blog Trash is for Tossers, which is a great name. Jealous I didn't take it. And she basically, her activism and her way of spreading the news about what a zero waste lifestyle was really stood out to me, because it wasn't like, this is the biggest thing in the entire world and there's so much trash and we really need to sort this now. It was more like, what can you do in your everyday life as something small that will actually create a huge impact? And I thought that that was really special because it made it personal. Like when I went vegan at the beginning for very vain reasons. I didn't stick on the bandwagon for very long until I made the connection and I watched 15 minutes of Earthlings. I couldn't watch the whole thing. But that was enough for me, and I made that personal connection, and I've been vegan ever since. But for zero waste, a lot of the big people say, for example, in America, they waste so much that every year, I think it's like if you put it into the size of a truck, it would fit around the earth twice. And you think about that and you're like, oh, that's just too much to think about. That's really like broad, I don't really know. So to try and think about it at a personal level and to try and think about what you're wasting every single day is more efficient at getting people to understand waste. Or that's how I found it. But unfortunately, there are lots, I don't know, there's a big hypocrisy in zero waste, I found. Zero wasters care about the environment. Zero wasters care about animals. A lot of zero wasters aren't vegan. And this has been something very hard for me to reconcile, because I try really hard to be calm and non-judgmental and welcoming. But when I talk to zero wasters and they kind of push it off, it just makes me mad. But I try really hard to just be understanding, because that's the best way that I have found to get people to understand both sides of the movement. Anyway, what is zero waste? To me, zero waste is a lifestyle where you're trying to reduce your impact as much as possible. You're trying to reuse, reduce, refuse, recycle, and rot. So we refuse what we don't need. We refuse plastic that can be maybe recycled once, and then if it is recycled, then that material can never be recycled again, and it will be on the earth forever. After your children have long gone, that plastic that you've used, every single item will still be here. And that's quite terrifying. And it makes you very conscious of what you're consuming, and it makes you very conscious. So refusing, and then we have reducing. Reducing what you need. We don't really need that much, but we think that we do because of advertising and media, and we think we need all of these new things. And every time we consume, we add money into that industry. And 95% of waste already happens before you've bought your item. So when you throw it away, that's only a 5% of waste that's already happened. So the next one, what is it? Reduce, reuse, reuse. So I made a really big mistake when I first went zero waste, tried to. I was like, right, I can buy all the mason jars in the world, I can buy all the canvas bags, it's gonna be great, I'm gonna have a really aesthetic kitchen. And I completely forgot about reusing. I buy lots of jars, or I used to, of olives, and these are perfect for using as a mason jar instead. Or if you have old t-shirts that you're like, don't want them anymore, well, you can turn them into grocery bags and you can turn them into bulk items. But I didn't really think about that. I was like, whatever. But then when you get to know and you get to understand your waste, that's when you realize how useful your items that you already have are. And it also helps you to get very creative. And that's why recycling is actually quite near the bottom of the list with rotting. As I said, because 95% of waste has already happened before you've even opened your package or before you've even used your item. So recycling is one of a last resort. It's still better than wasting, of course, but it still uses a huge amount of resources. And then rotting, obviously, is composting. And I find a lot of zero waste people a little bit pretentious, because when they do their talks, they bring a jar which has all their waste that they've ever wasted in the last 3 years. And when you see it, yes, it's pretty amazing. It's pretty like, wow, but it makes it feel like it's unattainable. It makes it feel like, how the hell am I gonna not waste that much stuff? How the hell am I gonna create one tiny jar of waste in 3 years? And that is why today I brought my Keep Cup. Because for me, this really symbolizes the zero waste campaign that I launched and what I'm here to talk about, which I'll get to, I promise. And this is a symbol for me because it's about the small everyday changes. It's about the daily changes that you can make in your life that will make a humongous impact that you might not even realize. So the zero waste campaign that I did, I basically got to a point where I was like, do you know what? I'm actually not committing to this very well. I really need to do a challenge with the people who follow me, and we really need to learn. But it's not like Veganuary. Like Veganuary is great because it's like 1st of January, right now I'm going to be vegan for a month. But for zero waste, it's more like I need to have the right tools to be able to understand this movement properly, and also to understand what the hell I'm meant to be doing, because it's really weird and complicated and sometimes it's confusing. So I decided that 2 weeks before the start of the challenge, I was like, right, we're going to do this challenge together. Who is with me? And loads of people signed up to it, which was really great and quite surprising. So I was like, oh shit, we actually have to do this now. So a week before the start date, on Instagram, I posted a picture every single day with one kind of zero waste tool. And the whole point of this was to equip people with the tools they needed, like knowledge and understanding. I don't think we need canvas bags and we don't need mason jars, but we need knowledge. We need an understanding of why we're doing this, otherwise we're not going to do this, and we're not going to continue to do it. So the whole point of this campaign was to allow people to track their waste, to understand their waste, and to make that connection between why they're doing this and what is the point in it. Because when you're wasting stuff, it's quite mindless, because it's very normal to go to a supermarket and pick up a bag of carrots in a plastic packaging. And then when you throw it away, it's like, well, we always throw stuff away, so it's normal. But when you're tasked with writing down and tracking every single item that you waste, you're suddenly like, wow, everything that I do creates waste. If you get up in the morning, I mean, what's your toothbrush made of? It's probably made of plastic, right? Your toothpaste, it's probably made of plastic. When you're having breakfast, if you're busy, you might be on the go, so you might be going in and getting a takeaway coffee in a takeaway coffee cup. You might be buying a sandwich. You might have been too lazy the night before to have made your lunch. You might have bought a train ticket. You might be having to buy a gift for someone. There are so many ways that we waste every single day. And the waste doesn't even start with us buying that item. The waste starts with the production. And when we buy new things, instead of filling money into the second-hand industry, that's when the waste and the demand just dramatically increase. So one of the things that actually was a little bit sad about this challenge was that people felt like failures. They were like, oh, I really tried to go zero waste. I tried really hard, but I couldn't help by this, or I couldn't help by that. And I just thought, this is not the point of the challenge. The point of the challenge is to learn about yourself and to learn about your consciousness and to help others. And I realized this a couple of weeks into the challenge, and this is when people started to be like, okay, I can do this. I'm learning. This is the whole point. I'm meant to fail so that I can learn to do better next time. And then after that, after people realized like, oh, this is a learning experience, this is what I'm meant to understand, then people started to really connect with people and to have conversations with people. To connect with people in conversations. And the amount of free coffees I have got because I've taken my Keep Cup is ridiculous. So if anything, if that's the only thing that you take away from this, you're going to get lots of free coffee. But it's also interesting the conversations that you have. I mean, I used to be so embarrassed about going to places and be like, excuse me, can I possibly have this in my container? And people would look at me and they'd be like, yeah, okay. But now I act as if it's like the most normal thing in the entire world. So people are like, oh, yeah, sure, what you're doing is great. I mean, yeah, fine, whatever. But before, it takes a long time. Well, for me it did, because I'm a nervous person. But once you get into it, you're like, oh, this is great. I can get everything package free. And then it's like one of those days when you spend no money. You're like, yes, I spent no money today. You start becoming that person who gets home and you're like, oh, I wasted nothing today. And it's really satisfying. And it's really empowering to know that you're in control of your waste. And to know that you don't have to buy into that consumerist society if you don't want to. And things are possible. I mean, Club Mexicana are one of my favorite people because I go there too often, to the one in Camden. And every time I ask for something in my own packaging or my own container, they are so happy to do it. And they are so just kind of interested. And it's really great when you talk to people and they're interested, because zero waste is a weird term. And when you're trying to say to people, I'm trying to live a zero waste lifestyle, they're like, oh, it's so pretentious. Oh, whatever, like, what does that really mean? And I mean, it's a goal, you know? If you're not striving for something that is ultimately, you know, I don't want to say perfect, because it's not perfect, but it is zero, then if you don't quite get there, you've done bloody well, just to even get to almost there. So you have to really take the word zero waste with a very big tablespoon of salt, because there are lots of hypocrisies within the zero waste movement. There are lots of things like people ask you, like, how do you wipe your ass? And you have to be like, well, yes, I do use toilet paper. That's always awkward. But and you know, other things like my sister was saying about like medication. Your health is important, and it's not your responsibility to be healthy. You know what I mean. It's their responsibility to create packaging that is not only safe for the medication, but also safe for the environment. Not all of it is up to the consumer. And this is why I'm always coming back to the idea that it's about what you can do with what you have. I was very bad at the beginning, being like, oh, you know, just go shop at Whole Foods and get your zero waste bulk items there. And I had no concern for people who lived outside of a city, and I had no concern for people who lived, you know, in the bloody sticks. Like, you know, you have to think about everyone. So I changed my tack and I was like, do the best that you possibly can with what you have, because that's all you can do. And there's no point in worrying and thinking that you're failing, because small changes by a lot of people is going to make a much bigger impact than, you know, a smaller amount of people going completely zero waste. Anyway, so I'm running out of time. So I thought the one thing I want to kind of leave you with, and the one thing I want you to take away from this, is if there is one thing in your day-to-day life, like if, like me, you bought a cup of coffee almost every day and you were wasting like 200 cups a year, something like that, ridiculous, because unfortunately it's a common misconception that coffee cups are recyclable, and 2.5 billion coffee cups in the UK alone end up going to landfill. So if there is one thing you take away, one thing, maybe just change your plastic bottle to a glass bottle or a stainless steel one. Maybe just change your keep cup, your disposable cup to a keep cup, or whatever cup. Or make your lunch every day, rather than going to Pret. I know veggie Pret's new and it's great, but if you can. Anyway, I think we've got some time for questions, so if anyone has any questions. If not, feel free to come and talk to me in the break instead.
So we definitely have time for questions.
Hello, thank you for a very inspiring talk. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, thanks.
I was just wondering if you could share some favorite tips on shopping your groceries to avoid waste. And also, would you recommend any ways of recycling plastic, especially in like day-to-day items? I find it especially difficult to purchase vegetables and stuff like that without plastic packaging, depending on where I shop. Some shops literally don't have them available. So if you could share some tips, that would be great.
Yeah, of course. Well, one of the first things is, if you shop seasonally and you do a bit of research, there are so many farmers markets that I found, particularly in Southeast London and East London, that are even cheaper than supermarkets. So research really is one of the most important things to do in terms of that. And it's actually nicer, obviously, to support farmers markets maybe than big supermarket chains. And also just, I mean, do the best that you can with what you have, is what I say to everyone. But if it's a big concern, then you just need to choose the items that you can buy unpackaged, or try and find them in even in one of those kind of, I don't know what they're called. I don't know. Yeah, something stringy, like one of those things. They're better than plastic, but they're still obviously not great. But farmers markets are always going to be your better option. Trying to find.
Do you have any thoughts on, you know, sometimes you go to these like restaurants and they'll say like, oh, you know, our cutlery is like completely recyclable plastic and it's biodegradable. Do you have any information on that? I heard that actually some of them might not necessarily be as eco-friendly as we think. Like you need industrial composters for them, and do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, there are lots of it's like with the coffee cups, you know? We get sold this idea that this item is 100% biodegradable, it's all really like cool, and oh look, it means I'm doing something really great, and it makes the company look really good. But the reality of it is that maybe 10% is actually recyclable, or maybe 20% is biodegradable, and they're allowed to say that it's biodegradable because part of it is. Unless it says 100% biodegradable and something like natural products on it, even that's a bit iffy. Like that is
Yeah. Sorry, just lastly, because some of the plastics, like they say that if you I don't know, bury it or whatever, it's like when you say compostable, you think, oh, I'll bury it in my garden, it'll dissolve, put it in the sea, it'll dissolve, but it won't. So do you think like maybe opting for wooden or paper straws might be the best option here, or bring your own steel ones? Or?
Yeah, I mean, anything that's reusable is always preferable, but wooden things are better because you can burn them, and that means they actually disappear. Or things like, like bamboo is a really good alternative. I would just try and stay away from disposable as much as you possibly can, because that's always going to end in tears when it comes to the zero waste thing. Because there's always a lie in there. They always pretend like everything's great, but there's always a lie. Like basically someone sent me a toothbrush being like, oh, it's fully biodegradable, will you try it out? I was like, yeah, sure, but actually it wasn't. It was so frustrating. So yeah, you always have to take it with a pinch of salt. You always have to be cautious and just try and avoid. Bring your own. That's always the best option.
Fantastic. Thank you, Amy. That's amazing.